My alarm clock always goes off at 5 in the morning, even now that I no longer rush to the morning shift at Christ the Savior Hospital. Old habits die hard, especially those ingrained in you by 40 years of a strict schedule. Groaning, I get out of bed, feeling my joints creak. 67 is no joke, especially when you've spent most of your life on your feet, running between hospital beds. My apartment in Hoboken is so small that I can reach the kitchen faucet without getting out of bed. It once seemed like a temporary solution, a tiny one-room apartment on the first floor of an old brick building on the outskirts of town. But the children grew up and I stayed here, surrounded by walls bearing traces of children's drawings and growth marks on the doorframe. The tiles in the kitchen cracked back in the 90s, and the refrigerator hums as if it's about to breathe its last breath. Just like me sometimes. I turn on the kettle and look out the small window overlooking the narrow alley between the houses. The sky is still dark, but soon dawn will paint it a cold February gray. "Good morning, Dorothy," I say to my reflection in the window. My gray hair sticks out in all directions, and my wrinkles seem deeper in the dim light. It's strange, because in my heart I'm still that 25-year-old girl who dreamed of becoming the head nurse of the ward. I pour boiling water over a bag of cheap tea and open the refrigerator. Half a baguette, some cheese, a jar of jam sent by Ruth, my upstairs neighbor. Ruth is the only person who still bakes for me. My own daughters have long forgotten that their mother loves blueberry jam. Leona and Priya, my girls who haven't been girls for a long time. Leona is 39. She works for a pharmaceutical company, doing some kind of sales or marketing. I've never quite understood. Priya is 35. She's an elementary school teacher, lives in the suburbs with her husband, whom I've seen twice in the 6 years they've been married. Priya has 2 sons, my grandsons, Aiden and Cole. I see them at Christmas, sometimes on Thanksgiving, if Priya doesn't come up with some excuse. After breakfast, I sort through the bills on the table. Electricity, heating, phone, health insurance. My nurse's pension is barely enough to keep me afloat. For the past 3 years, I've been working part-time at a local hospice twice a week, not so much for the money as to keep myself from going crazy with loneliness. However, the extra money is always welcome. My gaze falls on a photograph in a worn frame. Leona and Priya in their high school graduation dresses. Leona stands tall, her dark hair carefully styled, wearing the same tense smile she has now. Priya is huddled against her sister, her blonde hair tousled by the wind, her smile uncertain. I'm not in the photo. I was behind the camera, as usual. I get dressed and go out into the street. The February air bites my cheeks, forcing me to wrap my worn coat more tightly around me. It's a 20-minute walk to the hospice. On the way, I remember how I used to walk the girls to school, holding their hands tightly. Leona always broke free first. "Mom, I'm 14, it's embarrassing." Priya held on until the last moment, but as soon as Leona snorted, the younger one also pulled away. It was always like that. Leona set the tone. Priya followed her. The hospice is quiet, as it should be. I spend the morning helping patients with breakfast, changing bed linen, taking blood pressure and temperature readings. Here, I feel needed. Mrs. Kavanagh, an 80-year-old Irish woman with pancreatic cancer, squeezes my hand and whispers, "You're an angel, Dot." No one else calls me that. Dot. I like it. At lunchtime, my old cell phone rings. I see the name on the screen and my heart skips a beat. It's Leona. She rarely calls, usually only when she needs something. "Mom?" Her voice sounds strangely excited. I haven't heard her sound like that since her college graduation. "Hello, dear," I reply, trying not to sound surprised. "I'm getting married," she announces without preamble. "His name is Ash Dunleavy. He's the head of development at our company. We've been dating for a year." A year? I didn't even know she had a boyfriend. When we saw each other at Christmas, just 2 months ago, she didn't mention anything about a serious relationship. "Congratulations, sweetie. I'm so happy for you," I say sincerely, feeling a lump in my throat. My little girl is getting married. "When's the wedding?" Pause. "We haven't set a date yet. Listen, I have to run to a meeting. I'll call you later, okay?" And she hangs up before I can respond. Typical Leona. Drop a bombshell and disappear without giving me a chance to react. For the rest of the day, I can't think about anything else. My eldest daughter is getting married. I imagine the wedding dress, the flowers, the cake. Maybe now that she's starting her own family, our relationship will change. Maybe I'll get closer to her. And who knows, maybe I'll have grandchildren soon. In the evening, I decide to look in my stash, a tin cookie box hidden on the top shelf of the closet. That's where I keep my money for a rainy day. $4,300. Everything I've managed to save over the last 15 years. I've been saving this money for knee replacement surgery, which I've been putting off for 3 years. But now there's something more important than my bad knee. I have to do something special for Leona, something that will show her how much I love her, despite all our differences and her coldness. Maybe a wedding dress, or money for a honeymoon, or both? I look at my phone, thinking about calling Pri to find out more about my sister's fiancé. But something stops me. The last time I spoke to my younger daughter, she was irritated and barely restrained herself from being rude to me. I asked why the boys weren't coming to Grandma's for the weekend, and she replied something vague about their sports activities. Instead of calling, I decide to visit Priya. She lives in Cranford, not far from Hoboken. Tomorrow, I'll take the bus and visit her, and find out more about Leona's engagement. In the morning, I put on my best dress, dark blue with a small floral print, and a jacket I bought on sale 3 years ago. I paint my lips with pale pink lipstick and line my eyes. The mirror reflects a woman trying to look younger and more energetic than she is. But no amount of makeup can hide the bags under my eyes and the sagging skin on my neck. The drive to Cranford takes almost 2 hours with transfers. I didn't tell Priya about my visit. I'm afraid she'll find a reason to turn me away. Her house, a neat 2-story cottage in a quiet neighborhood, looks lifeless as I approach the porch. The curtains are drawn and there's no car in the driveway. I'm about to turn around and leave when I notice that the garage door is ajar. I walk around the house and peek inside. Priya is standing among boxes, sorting something. She's wearing old jeans and a stretched sweater, not at all like the teacher who stands in front of third graders every day. "Priya?" I call out. She flinches and drops the box. Children's toys scatter across the floor. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her tone isn't exactly unfriendly, more surprised, and a little wary. "Sorry for not warning you. I wanted to talk about Lion. She said she's getting married." Priya sighs and starts picking up the toys. "Yes, she is, to some big shot from her company. They met at a conference in Chicago. Have you met him? What's he like?" Priya shrugs. "He's okay. Smart, rich, I guess. He has his own house in Short Hills." Short Hills is one of the most expensive suburbs in New Jersey. I've heard that it's mostly company executives and doctors who live there. "I was thinking of getting her a wedding dress," I say, sitting down on an upside-down plastic basket. "I've got some savings." Priya freezes, holding a plastic dinosaur in her hands. Her expression becomes strange. "Mom, you do realize that Leona won't wear a dress you buy her, right?" Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. "Why?" Priya looks away. "You know how she is. She has to have the best of everything, especially now that she's marrying Ash, his family. They're the kind of people who fly first class and vacation on private islands. But I can give her money for a nice dress. She can choose it herself." "How much have you saved?" $4,300. Priya makes a sound like a laugh. "Mom, the dresses Leona is looking at cost $10,000. That's not including shoes, veils, and everything else." I feel myself blushing. Of course my savings won't be enough. I'm a stupid old woman living in the past. "You know," Priya says suddenly, more quietly, "Leona is a little shy around us." "Ashamed? What do you mean?" Priya sighs again. "Ash's parents are rich. His father owns a chain of pharmacies and his mother comes from some old money family. And who are we? The daughters of a nurse who grew up in a one-room apartment in Hoboken. I always tried to give you everything I could." My voice trembles. "I know, Mom. That's not what I meant." Priya sits down next to me. "It's just that Leona always wanted more. Remember how she was embarrassed to invite her friends over? How angry she was that she couldn't go to private school like her friends' kids?" I remember. Leona was always ambitious. As a child, she said she would be a doctor or a lawyer, live in a big house, and drive an expensive car. She looked at our life with ill-concealed disgust. "Did she tell you the wedding date?" I ask, changing the subject. Priya hesitates. Provisionally, the end of May, but there's no exact date yet. Will she invite me? There is a heavy pause. Priya avoids my gaze. Mom, don't take this to heart, but Leona said she wants an intimate wedding, just the closest family. I'm her mother. Who could be closer? Priya nervously fiddles with a thread on her sweater sleeve. That's not the point. It's just Ash's parents are throwing a reception. Very fancy. Important people from their circle will be there. And Leona wants to fit in. And I don't fit in, I finish for her. I didn't say that. But you thought it. We sit in silence. Somewhere in the house, a clock is ticking. I can hear the wind rustling the dry leaves in the yard. Mom, maybe we should just send her the money. It would be the most practical gift. Yes, probably. I get up, feeling pain in my knee. Priya walks me to the door. Are the boys at school? I ask, remembering my grandchildren. Yes, they have extra math lessons today. We both know that's an excuse. Priya just didn't want me to see them. On the bus ride home, I think about my daughters. When did they become such strangers? What did I do wrong? I always worked overtime to make sure they had everything they needed. I never drank, smoked, or brought men home after their father left us. I helped them with their homework, took them to the doctor, sewed their Halloween costumes, baked their birthday cakes. Maybe that's the problem? I gave them everything without asking for anything in return. I thought love didn't require gratitude, but it seems I was wrong. Back home, I take out my stash and count the money. $4,300. A small fortune for me, a drop in the ocean for Leona. But I'll give her every last cent. Maybe then she'll understand how much I love her. Maybe then she'll let me be part of her new life. I pick up the phone and dial Leona's number. After the 5th ring, her voicemail kicks in. I don't leave a message. Instead, I text her, Honey, I want to give you a wedding gift. Call me when you can. I love you. Mom. There is no reply after an hour or two. I fall asleep staring at my silent phone and dream of a wedding I wasn't invited to. A week has passed since Leona called me with the news of her engagement. My phone never rang again, and my message remained unanswered. I didn't call back. Over the years, I had learned not to impose myself when my daughter clearly didn't want to talk. But I couldn't stop thinking about the wedding. I imagined Leona in a white dress, holding a bouquet, happy and smiling, and myself next to her, the proud mother of the bride. My savings were still in a tin box on the top shelf, $4,300. I decided that if my eldest daughter was getting married, I had to do something special for her. It didn't matter that she hadn't replied to my message. It didn't matter that Priya's words about Leona being embarrassed by me were still ringing in my ears. I was her mother. I would be there for her. In the morning, after a sleepless night, I went to the bank and withdrew all my savings. The teller, an elderly woman with dyed red hair, raised her eyebrows in surprise when I asked for the entire amount in cash. Big plans, Mrs. Hayward? She asked, counting out the bills. My daughter is getting married, I replied proudly. The cashier smiled. Wonderful. My son got married last year. The wedding cost a fortune, but it was worth it. I nodded, even though I knew my amount was a drop in the ocean of wedding expenses. But it was all I had. With the money in my bag, I drove to Short Hills, the neighborhood where, according to Priya, Leona's fiancé lived. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to get a feel for the neighborhood where my daughter would soon be living. Or maybe I just wanted to see the stores where people like Leona's future in-laws shopped. Short Hills stunned me. A huge shopping mall with marble floors, sparkling shop windows, and stores with names I could barely pronounce. The people around me looked like they had stepped out of the pages of a glossy magazine, well-groomed, dressed in expensive clothes with perfect hairstyles. In my old coat and worn-out shoes, I looked ridiculous, like a sparrow among peacocks. Wandering between boutiques, I stumbled upon a jewelry store. The windows sparkled with diamonds, gold, and platinum. For some reason, I went inside. A young girl with perfect makeup and a simple black dress smiled at me warmly. How can I help you? I'm looking for a gift for my daughter. She's getting married. Wonderful. We have some gorgeous options for brides. What did you have in mind? Earrings? A bracelet? A necklace? I thought about it. What would Leona want? She had always loved beautiful things, gazing at the windows of expensive shops since she was a child. "How about engagement rings?" I asked, surprising myself. The girl raised her eyebrows slightly. "Usually, the bride and groom choose their own wedding rings, but we can offer you a gift certificate." "No, I want to give her the rings. I want my daughter to have something special." The girl led me to a display case with wedding rings. I gasped when I saw the prices. The simplest ring cost more than $1,000, and the prices for more elaborate ones reached $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 for a pair. "Do you have a specific budget?" the saleswoman asked tactfully. "About $4,000, I replied. "For a pair or for one ring?" "For a pair." She nodded and showed me several options. After much deliberation, I chose simple but elegant platinum rings with small diamonds. $3,800 for a pair, almost all of my savings. But when the saleswoman wrapped them in a velvet box, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It was a worthy gift. As I left the store, I saw a wedding dress boutique. The windows were decorated with mannequins in luxurious white gowns. I couldn't take my eyes off them. One dress in particular caught my eye. Simple, elegant, with a lace top and a silk skirt. It would be perfect for my Leon. Without thinking, I went inside. The sales assistant, an elderly woman with neatly styled gray hair, smiled warmly at me. "Are you looking for a dress for yourself?" "No, for my daughter. She's getting married." "How wonderful! Where's the bride?" "She's busy. I wanted to surprise her." The consultant looked surprised. "Usually brides choose their own dresses. It's such an important moment." "I know, but we have a special situation." I didn't explain that my daughter probably wouldn't even let me be there when she chose her dress, that she didn't answer my calls, that I just wanted to be part of this important event in her life, even if she was trying to shut me out. "Can I see that dress over there?" I pointed to the one I liked. The consultant took out the dress and showed it to me. It was even more beautiful up close, and it cost $5,000. "Do you have anything similar but cheaper?" I asked, feeling myself blush. The consultant nodded understandingly and showed me several other models. In the end, I chose a dress for $2,600. I hardly used my credit card, so I still had a decent limit left. It wasn't as luxurious as the first one, but it was still beautiful and elegant. I hoped that Leon would like it. As the consultant was wrapping the dress, she asked, "Are you sure about the size? Maybe you should wait until your daughter is here to try it on." "I think it will fit," I replied. "If not, it can be altered." The sales assistant nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She'd probably seen others like me before. Mothers desperately trying to be part of their daughter's wedding who wasn't particularly interested in it. With 2 large bags, the dress and the rings, I headed home. On the bus, I couldn't stop smiling. I imagined Leona opening the boxes, her eyes lighting up, hugging me and telling me I was the best mother in the world. When I got home, I called Leona again. This time she answered, her voice sounding annoyed. "Mom, is something wrong?" "Nothing, dear. I just wanted to know when we could meet. I have some wedding gifts for you." Pause. "What gifts?" "It's a surprise. When can I come over?" Another pause, longer this time. "I'm really busy at work, Mom. Maybe next month?" "Leona, this is important. I bought you a wedding dress and wedding rings." The silence on the other end was so long that I thought the line had gone dead. "You did what?" Leona finally said in a tone that made me freeze inside. "I bought you a dress and rings. I wanted to do something special for your wedding." "Mom, are you out of your mind? Who asked you to do that? How can you choose my wedding dress? And the rings, too?" I was flustered. "I thought you'd like it. Nice? Mom, it's my wedding. Mine. I'm choosing the dress, the rings, and everything else. You can't just go and interfere." "But Leona, I spent all my savings." "Did I ask you to?" "No, God, Mom, why do you always ruin everything?" Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I was silent, not knowing what to say. "Fine," Leona sighed, calming down a little. "Since you've done this, Ash and I are having dinner at Le Bernardin tomorrow at 7. You can come there and bring your gifts. You can meet Ash at the same time." "Le Bernardin? Is that in New York?" "Yes, Mom. It's a French restaurant. It's very expensive and fancy, so please wear something nice." With that, she hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling bitterly disappointed. Why did everything go wrong? Why wasn't Leona happy? Why does she always see something bad in what I do? I looked around my small closet, wondering what would be considered decent for a restaurant like that. I had one black dress that I wore to a colleague's funeral 3 years ago, and an old jacket that I could clean. No jewelry except for a pair of simple pearl earrings that my husband gave me many years ago before he left the family. A knock on the door brought me out of my reverie. It was Ruth, my upstairs neighbor, a plump woman with kind eyes and perpetually tousled gray hair. We had been friends for 15 years, ever since she moved into our building. "Dorothy, would you borrow me some sugar? I'm out and I'm baking cookies." I opened the door and let her in. "Sure, Ruth, I'll get it right away." She followed me into the kitchen and noticed the bags from Short Hills. "Wow, you were at the mall? That's something new." I told her about Leona's call, my trip to Short Hills, buying the dress and rings, and about my daughter's reaction. Ruth shook her head. "Oh, Dot, you expect too much from her. You know what she's like." "I know, but I was hoping the wedding would change things, that she would let me be there for her." "What's he like? Have you seen him?" "No. All I know is his name is Ash, and he's some big shot at a pharmaceutical company. I'm meeting him tomorrow at a restaurant in New York." "At a restaurant? Well, at least she invited you to dinner, that's something." I nodded, but I wasn't sure the invitation was sincere. More likely, Leona just wanted to get the gifts and get rid of me. "Dorothy, have you ever wondered why you let her treat you like that?" Ruth asked suddenly. "What do you mean?" "She ignores you. She doesn't answer your calls. And then, when she finds out you've spent all your savings on gifts for her, instead of saying thank you, she throws a fit. And you still run to her as soon as she beckons you." I lowered my eyes. Ruth was right. But what could I do? Leona was my daughter, my flesh and blood. I loved her no matter what. "I just want to be a part of her life," I said quietly. Ruth sighed and hugged me. "I know, dear, I know. I just don't want her to hurt you again." The next day, I spent hours preparing dinner. I washed and ironed a black dress, cleaned my jacket, and even went to the hairdresser's. A cheap one, of course, but still, to freshen up my hair. I put on my pearl earrings and my only ring, my wedding ring, which I had never taken off, even though my husband had left me 25 years ago. With my dress and the box of rings, I set off for New York. The trip took almost 2 hours. I grew more nervous with every passing minute. How would I look in this expensive restaurant? What if I did something wrong? What if I embarrassed Leona in front of her fiancé? Le Bernardin was even more elegant than I had expected. The interior was decorated in muted colors, with crystal chandeliers and waiters in white gloves. I felt completely out of place. "Can I help you?" asked the maitre d', giving me a once-over. "I'm meeting my daughter and her fiancé, Lion Hayward." He checked the list. "Yes, a table for 3. Miss Hayward and Mr. Dunleavy are already waiting for you." He led me through the dining room to a table by the window. Leona sat with her back straight in an elegant dark blue dress, her hair and makeup perfect. Next to her was a tall man with graying temples wearing an expensive suit. They were engaged in lively conversation, but it stopped when they noticed me. Leona smiled stiffly. "Mom, finally. This is Ash. Ash, this is my mother, Dorothy." Ash stood up and shook my hand. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Hayward." "Please call me Dorothy," I said, sitting down at the table. The waiter appeared instantly with the menu. I glanced at the prices and nearly gasped. The salad was $30, and the main courses were over $100. I had never been to such an expensive place in my life. "Leona has told me a lot about you," Ash said, although I could tell from his tone that it wasn't true. "Really?" I looked at my daughter, but she avoided my gaze. "Of course. She said you were a nurse. That's such a noble profession." I was a nurse. I'm mostly retired now, although I sometimes work at a hospice. Ash nodded with polite interest, but it was clear he wasn't very interested. He turned to Leona. "Honey, did you tell your mom the news?" Leona blushed. "I was just about to. Mom, Ash and I have decided to get married in May, in 2.5 months." "So soon? But you just told us you were engaged." "We don't see any reason to wait," Ash replied. "Besides, my parents are going on a long trip in June and we want them to be at the wedding." Of course, I nodded. Where will the ceremony be? Leona and Ash exchanged glances. At Ash's parents' country club in Connecticut, Leona replied. It's a very beautiful place, and exclusive. Sounds wonderful, I said, though inside I felt a twinge of disappointment. Connecticut. That's far away, and I'm sure exclusive means expensive and not for people like you. By the way, Mom, Leona lowered her voice, did you bring, what I asked you to? I nodded and took a box with rings and a folded receipt for a dress out of my bag. The dress is too big to carry around, but here's the receipt. You can pick it up at the store anytime. Leona took the receipt and glanced at it. Her face changed. Mom, that dress is from last year's collection, and it's, not really my style. Oh, I felt myself blushing. I didn't know. I thought it was so elegant. It's nice, Leona said quickly, hiding the receipt in her purse. But I already have my eye on a dress by Vera Wang. Ash's parents insisted on paying for it as a wedding gift. Oh, I see, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. Well, maybe you can return the dress to the store and get your money back. Yes, of course. Leona clearly wanted to drop the subject. I handed her the box with the rings. These are the engagement rings. I chose the most beautiful ones I could find. Leona opened the box and looked at the rings. Her face showed nothing but polite interest. They're cute. Ash glanced over her shoulder and frowned slightly. Very traditional. Thanks, Mom. Leona closed the box and put it in her bag. But Ash and I have already ordered rings from the jeweler who makes jewelry for his entire family. They'll have the Dunleavy family diamonds. I felt something break inside me. All my savings, everything I had worked so hard to save over the years, wasted. The dress she would never wear, the rings that would gather dust in a drawer. I understand, was all I could manage to say. The waiter brought our food, and the conversation moved on to other topics. Ash talked about his work, his plans for the future, the house he and Leona had found in Short Hills. Leona beamed at him, chiming in with comments and laughing at his jokes. They were the perfect couple, successful, beautiful, confident, and I felt like a third wheel at the table, ridiculous in my old dress, awkwardly trying to keep the conversation going. After dessert, Ash excused himself and went to take a call. Leona and I were left alone. He seems very nice, I said. He's wonderful, Leona replied, watching him walk away. And his family, you have no idea, Mom. They're the kind of people you read about in magazines. They have a family crest, can you imagine? Impressive, I nodded, although I didn't really understand why a modern family would have a family crest. Leona lowered her voice. Listen, Mom, I wanted to talk to you about the wedding. Yes? I perked up, hoping she would ask me to help with the preparations. The thing is, it's going to be a very intimate affair, just close friends and family. Of course, I understand. She took a deep breath. Mom, I don't know how to say this gently, but you're not invited to my wedding. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. What? Don't get me wrong. It's not you personally. It's just, you wouldn't fit in. Ash's parents are very conservative, very image conscious. They're from an old, wealthy family, you know? And you? What about me? My voice trembled. Leona looked away. You look ashamed, Mom. Your clothes, your speech, your manners. You're just not from their world. You'll embarrass me in front of my new family. I looked at her, unable to believe my ears. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, was so ashamed of me that she didn't want me at her wedding. But I'm your mother, Leona, I said quietly. How can you get married without me? Ash and his parents think it would be better if what? If you pretend you don't have a mother, or that I'm dead? Leona was silent, and that silence spoke louder than any words. My God, I whispered. Are you really going to tell them I'm dead? Not everyone, Leona replied hastily. Only those who ask. Most people won't care. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I held them back, not here, not in this luxurious restaurant where I already felt like a stranger. I raised you on my own, Leona, I said quietly. After your father left, I worked 3 jobs to provide for you and Priya. I skipped meals so you could have new dresses for prom. I didn't go to the doctor when my knee hurt because I had to pay for your tutoring. And now you're telling me I'm not good enough for your wedding? "Mom, please don't make a scene," Leona said nervously, looking around. "I appreciate everything you've done for us. I really do, but this is about my future, my new family. I can't take that risk." "Risk what? That your rich fiancé finds out you're the daughter of a nurse, not some socialite? Ash knows who you are, but his parents, they place a lot of importance on background, and I don't want them to think less of me because of me," I finished for her. At that moment, Ash returned. He immediately sensed the tension. "Everything okay, ladies?" "Of course, dear." Leona smiled stiffly. "Mom was just about to leave. She has an early shift at the hospice tomorrow." I looked at my daughter, but she avoided my gaze. Well, if she wanted me to leave, I would leave. "Yes, I should be going," I said, standing up. "It was nice meeting you, Ash." "Likewise, Dorothy," he said, shaking my hand with a polite smile. "Leona, will you walk me to the door?" I asked, hoping for another minute alone with my daughter. She nodded reluctantly and stood up. "I'll be right back, dear," she said to Ash and walked with me to the exit. At the restaurant door, I turned to her. "Leona, think about it again, please. I'm your mother." She crossed her arms over her chest. Her face was impenetrable, like a mask. "My decision is final, Mom, and I would prefer that you not try to contact Ash's parents or come to the ceremony uninvited. It will only complicate things." "Make it more complicated for whom? For you? Or for me, when I'm sitting at home on my only daughter's wedding day, knowing that somewhere out there you're saying your vows and everyone thinks I'm dead?" Leona sighed. "Mom, I don't want to argue, but I won't change my mind. What about the money I gave you? And the dress? And the rings?" "I'll pay you back for the dress, I promise, and I'll keep the rings as a memento," she said, as if she were doing me a favor. "What about the $500 in cash I put in the box with the rings? Did you notice it?" Leona blinked. "What $500? There was no money in there." "There was. Under the lining of the box," I lied, watching her reaction. She frowned in confusion. I didn't see it. I'll look when I get home." I smiled bitterly. "Don't bother. There's nothing there. I just wanted to see if you had even opened the box or if you had put it aside without even looking at the rings I had chosen with such love." Leona blushed. "That's not fair, Mom." "Unfair? Is throwing your own mother out of your life fair?" We stood facing each other like two strangers. My daughter, so beautiful in her expensive dress, with her perfect makeup, looked at me as if I were an annoying nuisance, an unpleasant reminder of a past she was trying to forget. "I have to get back to Ash," she finally said. "Goodbye, Mom." She turned and walked away without looking back. I stood at the door of the luxurious restaurant, feeling the tears finally break through the dam I had been holding back all evening. I got home late that night. The apartment greeted me with silence and emptiness. I turned on the light and saw my reflection in the small mirror in the hallway. An elderly woman with red eyes from crying, wearing an old-fashioned black dress, her face marked by fatigue and disappointment. Did I really look as shameful as Leona had said? Did my existence embarrass her so much that she preferred to pretend I didn't exist? I took out a photo album and opened it to the page with Leona's childhood photos. There she was, 3 years old, with curly dark hair and serious eyes, sitting on my lap. Here we are baking cookies together, flour on her nose, a happy smile on her face. Here she is, 7 years old, proudly showing off her first tooth. When did everything change? When did my loving little girl turn into this cold, calculating woman who is ashamed of her origins? I closed the album and put it aside. Memories won't help now. They only make the pain worse. There was a knock at the door. I flinched. It was too late for visitors. Ruth was standing on the doorstep with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "I saw the light on in your window," she said. "How was dinner?" I let her in and briefly told her about my meeting with Leona and Ash, about how my daughter had rejected all my gifts, and about how I wasn't invited to the wedding because I looked shameful. Ruth listened as she poured wine into the glasses. When I finished, she handed me a glass and said, "Your daughter is an ungrateful bitch, Dorothy. I'm sorry for being blunt, but it's the truth." I flinched. No matter how hurt I was by Leona, hearing those words about her hurt. "She just wants a different life, Ruth." A life where there's no place for an old nurse from Hoboken. And that excuses the way she treats you? All these years you've given her everything you could, and she throws you away like a used rag as soon as she finds a rich boyfriend. I took a sip of wine, feeling it warm me from the inside. Maybe I really was a bad mother. Maybe I worked too much and didn't spend enough time with the girls. "Stop it," Ruth said sharply. "You were a wonderful mother. You did everything you could under the circumstances. And if Leona doesn't appreciate that, that's her problem, not yours." I shook my head. "What am I supposed to do now, Ruth? How am I supposed to come to terms with the fact that my daughter is getting married and I can't even be there to see it?" Ruth thought for a moment. "What about Priya? Is she invited to the wedding?" "I think so. She's always been closer to Leona than to me, and maybe she fits better into this new world. Maybe you could talk to her? Ask her to influence her sister?" I remembered our conversation with our younger daughter in the garage, how she had tried to soften the truth, but still made it clear that Leona was ashamed of both of us. "I don't think that will help. Priya always follows Leona. She would never go against her." Ruth and I sat in silence, sipping our wine. Rain fell outside, the drops tapping against the glass in a strangely soothing rhythm. "You know," Ruth said suddenly, "when my son got married, his wife tried to exclude me from the wedding too. Not as openly as your Leona, but I could feel it. They planned everything without me, didn't ask my opinion, invited mostly her family and friends." "And what did you do?" "I talked to my son, not with accusations, just told him how hurtful it was to feel left out on his big day. And you know what? He listened to me. He insisted that I be involved in the preparations. He made his fiancée respect me." "Leona isn't like that," I sighed. "She's always gotten her way ever since she was a child. And now that she's met the man of her dreams, she won't let me stand in her way." "Then maybe you should let it go," Ruth said gently. "Not for her, but for yourself, to preserve your own dignity." I looked at my friend. "Let it go? How?" "Stop trying to be part of her life if she doesn't want you to be. Stop wasting your emotions, time, and money on her. Focus on yourself, your interests, the people who really appreciate you." It sounded logical, but it seemed so difficult. How could I just stop worrying about my daughter? How could I not want to be there for her on the most important day of her life? "I don't know if I can," I admitted honestly. Ruth squeezed my hand. "Of course you can. You're stronger than you think, Dorothy. You survived your husband's death, raised 2 daughters on your own, worked hard for decades. You can handle this." We finished our wine and Ruth left, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I couldn't sleep for a long time, tossing and turning in bed, replaying the events of the evening in my head. Leona's words rang in my ears. "You look ashamed, Mom." Towards morning, I finally fell into a restless sleep. I dreamed of Leona's wedding, a white tent, flowers, music. I stood off to the side, invisible to everyone like a ghost, watching my daughter walk down the aisle in a dress I had never seen before. And next to her, instead of me, was an elegant older woman, perhaps Ash's mother or some imaginary mother that Leona preferred to the real one. I woke up to the sound of the alarm clock, feeling broken. Ahead of me was a normal day, a shift at the hospice, then a trip to the grocery store, laundry, maybe a phone call with Ruth. An ordinary day that would have been no different from hundreds of others in my life, if not for the heaviness in my heart at the thought that in 2.5 months, my daughter would be getting married without me. The phone rang in the morning. I picked up the receiver, not really hoping it was Leona. She was unlikely to call after yesterday. "Dorothy, this is Frank Keller." I was surprised to hear that voice. Frank had been a colleague of mine at the hospital many years ago. We sometimes worked the same shift and got along well, but after I retired, we had hardly spoken. "Frank, how nice to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm fine, thanks. Listen, I need to talk to you. Do you remember Martha Reeves from oncology?" "Of course. How could I forget her? She was the best head nurse I ever worked with. She passed away yesterday. Cancer, of all things. The funeral is on Wednesday. I thought you might want to come." I sighed. Another funeral. At my age, they're becoming more and more frequent. "Thanks for letting me know, Frank. I'll be sure to come." We talked a little more about old times, mutual acquaintances, how the hospital had changed since we worked there. Frank was still working part-time, even though he was 69. After our conversation, I sat down at my desk and thought about Frank. I had always thought of him as just a colleague. But now, looking back, I realized that he had always been kind to me. He brought me coffee during night shifts, helped with difficult patients, listened to my complaints about my ex-husband who didn't pay child support. Once he even asked me out to dinner, but I declined. I was too busy with the girls and work. Maybe Ruth is right. Maybe I should focus on the people who appreciate me instead of wasting my energy trying to earn the approval of a daughter who is ashamed of me. I looked at my phone, thinking about calling Frank and suggesting we meet before the funeral, have a coffee, and remember Martha. But something stopped me. Fear? Insecurity? Or just an old habit of putting myself last? Instead, I dialed Leona's number. She didn't answer, and I didn't leave a message. Then I called Pri. Her phone was silent too. My daughters were living their lives, in which there was less and less room for me. I hung up and looked out the window. It was a clear, sunny day, rare for February in New Jersey. Maybe it was a sign that it was time to stop living in the past and start thinking about the present, about myself. I picked up the phone and dialed Frank's number again. When he answered, I said, "Frank, I've been thinking, maybe we could meet before the funeral. Have a coffee, remember Martha in the old days?" He agreed so readily that it warmed my heart. When I hung up, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if some of the weight I had been carrying since last night had been lifted. Leona had made her choice. She had decided that I wasn't worthy of being part of her new life. Did it hurt? Unbearably. But maybe it was time for me to make a choice too, a choice in favor of myself. 2 weeks passed after dinner with Leona and Ash. 2 weeks of silence. 2 weeks of trying to convince myself that things weren't as bad as they seemed. Maybe Leona would change her mind. Maybe she would understand how important it was for a mother to be at her daughter's wedding. I clung to that hope like a drowning man clings to a straw. My knee hurt more than usual, a consequence of years of working on my feet. I used to save money for surgery, but now those savings had turned into rejected gifts. I tried not to think about it, taking painkillers and continuing to work at the hospice, even though every step was painful. That day, I was coming home from work later than usual. I had stayed late to help a new nurse with paperwork. It was already getting dark, and the March air was chilly and damp. I walked slowly, leaning on the cane I had finally started using on my doctor's advice. Passing by Joe's Cafe, I saw a familiar figure at a table by the window, Priya. My youngest daughter was sitting hunched over a cup of coffee, typing something on her phone. I froze. We hadn't seen each other since that conversation in the garage. She hadn't called or texted. I could have walked past, but something made me push open the cafe door. The bell rang. Priya looked up and froze when she saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I'm on my way home from work," I said, walking over to her table. "I didn't expect to see you in Hoboken. You rarely leave Cranford." Priya was clearly uncomfortable. "I had a meeting with a former classmate. She lives here now. Can I sit down?" She hesitated, but then nodded. I sat down on a chair, relieved to stretch out my sore leg. "Is that your knee?" Priya asked, noticing my cane. "Yes, old injuries. Nothing new." We sat in an awkward silence. My relationship with Priya had always been complicated, not as tense as with Leona, but not close either. She kept her distance, as if afraid I would demand too much of her. "How are the boys?" I asked about her grandsons. "Fine. Aiden won the school math competition. Cole started playing football." "That's wonderful. I'd love to see them." Priya took a sip of coffee without answering. I felt the familiar pain of rejection. "Have you spoken to Leona?" I asked finally. Priya tensed. "About what?" "About the wedding. About her not inviting me." "Oh, that." She looked away. "Yes, she mentioned something about that." "Something about that?" "Priya, she said right to my face that I looked embarrassing and that I wouldn't be at her wedding." Priya sighed. "Mom, it's complicated. Ash comes from a very wealthy family. They have certain expectations. And I don't meet them. It's not you personally, it's just what? Am I not rich enough, not educated enough, or do I just embarrass you both by existing?" Priya blushed. "You're being unfair." "Unfair? Your sister refuses to have me at her wedding, and you're justifying it. What do you call that, Priya? She wrapped her hands around the cup as if seeking support. Leona always wanted more. You know that. Ever since she was a child, she always dreamed of a different life. A beautiful, glamorous life. And now that she's found it with Ash, she wants to forget her past. About me. Priya was silent, and that silence spoke louder than any words. I know the wedding is in 6 weeks, I said, at Ash's parents' country club. I know you're going to be a bridesmaid. I know there will be about 200 guests. It's not the intimate ceremony she tried to describe to me. Priya looked at me in surprise. How do you know? Ruth, my neighbor, has a niece who works for a wedding planning company. They're planning Leona and Ash's wedding. She happened to see their names on the list and told Ruth. Mom, you know what hurts the most, Priya? It's not that I wasn't invited. It's that Leona lied to my face about a small ceremony. 200 guests is not a small ceremony. It means there will be distant relatives, colleagues, casual acquaintances, everyone except her own mother. Priya looked away. You have to understand her, Mom. She's been given a chance to start a new life, to become part of the Dunleavy family, their circle. Do you know how much the house they're buying in Short Hills costs? $2 million. Ash has a high position in his father's company. They'll have opportunities we could never dream of. And for that, she has to renounce her mother? Priya was silent, twirling her cup in her hands. I looked at her, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her expensive coat that probably cost more than I made in a month. My youngest daughter. When did she become such a stranger? There's something else you should know, Priya finally said, not looking at me. Leona. She's been telling people you died. Years ago. I felt the ground slip away beneath my feet. It was one thing not to be invited to a wedding, but to find out your daughter had declared you dead was something else entirely. What? I gasped. She told Ash's parents that you died of cancer when we were 16 and 12, that our father raised us, but he lives in Florida now and can't come to the wedding either. But that's crazy. Why? Why make up a lie like that? Priya finally looked at me. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of guilt and pity, because the truth doesn't fit the story she wants to tell. A nurse mother who struggles to make ends meet in a one-room apartment in Hoboken doesn't fit the image of the future Mrs. Dunleavy. I sat there, stunned by the news. My daughter hadn't just rejected me. She had erased me from her life, replacing me with a fabricated story that better suited her new image. And you? I asked Priya. Do you tell people I'm dead too? She lowered her eyes. Leona asked me to go along with it at the wedding, for her sake, for her future. And you agreed? You agreed to pretend that your mother was dead? Priya didn't answer, and that was answer enough. I felt something break inside me. The last thread connecting me to my daughters was severed. I can't believe this, I whispered. My own daughters. Mom, understand. There's nothing to understand, I said, standing up with the help of my cane. I understand everything. I was good enough for you when I worked 3 jobs so you could go to a decent school. I was good when I gave up new clothes to buy you textbooks. I was good when I sat by your bed at night, Priya, when you had pneumonia. But now that you have a chance at a better life, I've become a burden. So inconvenient that it's easier to declare me dead. Priya looked ashamed but didn't argue. Mom, it's not like that. Yes, it is. I felt tears welling up in my throat, but I held them back. You know what, Priya? I'm letting you go. Both of you. Go live your wonderful new life without a shameful nurse for a mother. Pretend you grew up in a wealthy family if you want to. I won't get in your way anymore. I turned and walked toward the exit, barely able to move my legs. My knee hurt unbearably, but that pain was nothing compared to the pain tearing my heart apart. Mom! Priya called after me, but I didn't turn around. It was cold and dark outside. I wandered home, barely able to see the road through my tears, dead. My daughter had declared me dead so she could fit into her new life, as if all the sacrifices I had made for her, all the love I had given her, had never existed. At home, I collapsed onto the bed without taking off my clothes. For the first time in many years, I allowed myself to truly cry. I cried from the pain, from the disappointment, from the feeling of complete loss. My daughters, my girls, whom I had raised with such love, had disowned me. They had erased me from their lives like an inconvenient reminder of the past. I don't know how long I lay there, but at some point the doorbell rang. I didn't want to see anyone, but the bell kept ringing. Finally, I got up and, wiping my eyes, went to open the door. Standing on the doorstep was Frank Keller, my former colleague, with a bag in his hands and a worried look on his face. "Dorothy, are you okay? I called you several times, but you didn't answer. I decided to stop by and check on you." I looked at him, not understanding what he was doing at my door. We hadn't seen each other since Martha Reeves' funeral 2 weeks ago. After the ceremony, we had coffee and reminisced about old times at the hospital, but we hadn't spoken since. "Frank, what are you doing here?" I was worried. "You missed our former colleagues' meeting yesterday. That's not like you." I had completely forgotten about the monthly meeting of retired nurses that I had been attending for years. In recent days, all I could think about was the situation with Leona. "I'm sorry, I forgot." Frank looked at me intently. "Have you been crying? What happened?" I wanted to lie and say that everything was fine, that I was just tired. But instead, I burst into tears again, right there on the doorstep. Without hesitation, Frank stepped forward and hugged me. His embrace was warm and reassuring, exactly what I needed so badly. "Dorothy, whatever happens, we'll get through this," he said quietly. "You're not alone." When I had calmed down a little, we went into the kitchen. Frank put the kettle on and took some food containers out of a bag. I brought dinner, nothing fancy, just lasagna from the Italian restaurant around the corner, and blueberry pie for dessert. "Why are you doing this, Frank?" I asked, wiping my eyes. He shrugged as he divided the food between plates. "Because we're friends, and because you look like you could use a good dinner and a friendly shoulder." Over dinner, I told him everything. About Leona's engagement, my attempts to get her a gift, how she rejected me, my meeting with Priya, and the terrible news that my daughter had declared me dead. Frank listened without interrupting, only shaking his head occasionally. When I finished, he was silent for a long time, then said, "You know, Dorothy, I've always admired you. The way you coped after your husband left, how you raised your girls on your own, how you never complained, even when things were tough. You're the strongest woman I know." "I don't feel strong right now," I admitted. "Of course not. What your daughters did was a betrayal, and you're hurting. That's normal." "I don't know what to do next, Frank. How am I supposed to live with this? How can I accept that my own children think I'm a burden they'd rather be rid of?" Frank thought for a moment. "Maybe you need to think about yourself, Dorothy. Not them, but you. What do you want? What do you need?" I was taken aback. Over decades of motherhood, I had become accustomed to putting my daughter's needs before my own. I rarely thought about what I wanted for myself. "I don't know," I replied honestly. For so long, all my thoughts were about the girls, about their future. I forgot how to think about myself. "Then maybe it's time to remember," Frank said gently. "You're still young, Dorothy." "I'm 67, I smiled involuntarily. "So what? You've got many years ahead of you. You can travel, learn new things, make friends, live for yourself, not for daughters who don't appreciate your sacrifices." His words made sense, but it was hard for me to imagine such a life. How could I start thinking about myself when my whole being was focused on motherhood? Even if my children rejected me, I don't know if I can just let them go, Frank. They're my daughters no matter what. No one is saying you have to reject them, but maybe you should take a step back and let them live their lives, even if that life doesn't include you, and you can live yours. We sat in the small kitchen, finishing the blueberry pie. Rain began to fall outside, the drops drumming against the window. At that moment, I felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe Frank was right. Maybe it was time to think about myself, about my desires, my dreams, my future, without constantly looking back at my daughters, who had long since grown up and chosen their own paths. "You know, I've always wanted to go to Italy," I said suddenly, "to see Rome, Venice, Florence. But first, I didn't have the money. Then I didn't have the time. Then I was afraid to go alone." Frank smiled. "That's a wonderful dream, and a perfectly achievable one." "Maybe." I wasn't sure I would ever decide to take such a trip. But just discussing the possibility felt like a small step towards something new. When Frank got ready to leave, it was already late. He helped me clear the table and wash the dishes. "Thank you," I said, walking him to the door. "For dinner, for the conversation, for everything." "You're welcome," he smiled. "Listen, there's a jazz band playing in Hamilton Park this Saturday. Nothing special, just local musicians, but it should be nice. Would you like to join me?" I hesitated. It sounded suspiciously like a date, and I hadn't been on a date in, more than 25 years. Not since my husband left. "I don't know, Frank. Just as friends," he added quickly, noticing my confusion. "No strings attached. Just two old colleagues listening to some good music in the park." "Well, if that's all." I felt the corners of my mouth turn up in a smile. "I think I could go." "Great," Frank beamed. "I'll pick you up at 2 o'clock, okay?" After he left, I stood at the window for a long time watching the rain. Different feelings were fighting inside me. The pain of my daughter's betrayal, the bitterness of being declared dead, but also a tiny, almost imperceptible spark of hope. Hope that maybe there could still be good moments in my life, that maybe I wasn't quite dead yet, despite Leona's claims. I went to bed feeling strangely calm. Tomorrow would be a new day, a day when I would try not to think about my daughters and their betrayal, but about myself, about what I wanted, Dorothy Hayward, a woman, not just a mother. The Willow Creek Country Club in Connecticut looked exactly as I had imagined it, a luxurious colonial-style building surrounded by immaculately manicured lawns and centuries-old trees. I sat in a rental car in the parking lot across the street, watching guests arrive in expensive cars and elegant outfits. Each of them had an invitation that I didn't have. There was an hour left before the ceremony. I had arrived early to look around and find a place where I could watch unnoticed. The plan was crazy, I knew that. A normal mother wouldn't sneak into her own daughter's wedding, but a normal daughter wouldn't declare her mother dead for the sake of a beautiful story. 2 months had passed since the day I learned the truth from Priya. 2 months of trying to let go, forget, forgive. Frank helped as best he could. We met regularly, went to concerts, to the movies, just walked in the park. He was a patient listener, didn't judge, didn't pressure me with advice. He was just there for me. But the closer the wedding day got, the stronger my desire to see her with my own eyes grew. Not to interfere, not to cause a scene, just to be there. I wanted to see my little girl get married, even if she would rather see me dead. Frank tried to talk me out of it. "It'll only hurt you, Dorothy," he said. And he was right. But I went anyway. I had to see it with my own eyes to truly let go. I got out of the car, adjusting the simple blue dress and jacket I had bought especially for this day. No black. I didn't want to look like I was actually at a funeral. A small hat with a veil, transparent enough to see through but hiding my face from casual glances. A handbag with tissues. I knew I would cry. And an old photo of Leona as a child. I didn't know why I had brought it. The club grounds were huge. I walked around the building and saw a snow-white tent set up on the lawn. People in staff uniforms were bustling around, arranging flowers and checking the lighting. The ceremony was planned to take place outdoors, with a reception in the club's banquet hall. I moved along the hedge, trying to find a place where I could watch unnoticed. A small hill away from the tent seemed ideal, close enough to see what was happening, far enough away not to be seen. I could get there through a garden gate hidden in the lilac bushes. Sitting on a bench under an old oak tree, I watched as the guests gradually filled the rows of white chairs in front of the flower-decorated archway. The musicians were tuning their instruments. Everything looked perfect, like in a movie or a glossy magazine. I recognized Ash's parents, an elegant older couple receiving congratulations from the guests. The woman wore a pearl gray suit with perfect hair and posture. The man wore a tuxedo with gray hair at his temples, looking like Ash, only older. They looked exactly as I had imagined, refined, confident, belonging to a world I could only read about. Suddenly, my heart sank. What if this was all a mistake? What if Leona saw me? What if I ruined her wedding day? That was exactly what she was afraid of, that I would embarrass her in front of her new family. Maybe I should leave right now, before it was too late. But before I could get up, I saw Priya coming out of the main building. She was wearing a delicate lilac bridesmaid's dress, her hair styled elegantly. My youngest daughter looked beautiful and happy, not at all like a woman who was about to pretend that her mother was dead. Behind her were 3 other girls in similar dresses, presumably the rest of the bridesmaids. They were chatting animatedly and laughing. It was the usual pre-wedding bustle. I sat motionless, afraid of being noticed, although from such a distance and with a veil over my face, it was unlikely. Another half-hour passed. The guests took their seats. Music began to play, a gentle melody played by a string quartet. Ash appeared with his best man, a young man who looked like him, perhaps his brother. They stood at the arch with the priest, and then I saw her. Leona walked down the white-carpeted aisle arm in arm with Ash's father. Her dress— I froze when I recognized it. It was the dress I had bought for her, the one she had called cute, but not my style, the one I was going to return to the store. She was wearing it, the gift she had so dismissively rejected. I felt tears running down my cheeks. I don't know why she decided to wear it. Maybe the Vera Wang dress didn't fit? Maybe it was a gesture of reconciliation I didn't know about. Or was it just a coincidence? She chose the same one without knowing I had already bought it. The wedding seemed unreal, as if I were watching a movie. Leona and Ash stood under the arch, saying their vows, exchanging rings. The wind carried snippets of their words, but I couldn't make out everything. The guests applauded when they kissed. My daughter was happy, and that should have made me happy, but I felt only emptiness and alienation. I was a spectator, a stranger at my own daughter's wedding. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the banquet hall. I remained sitting on my bench, not knowing what to do next. The plan was just to watch the ceremony and then leave, but something kept me there. Maybe hope for a miracle? That Leona would suddenly see me, regret her decision, and invite me to join them? I knew it was silly, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. Suddenly, I saw a woman walking down the garden path toward me, elegant with impeccable posture, dressed in a pearl gray suit, Ash's mother. She walked with determination, as if she knew exactly where she was going and why. My heart began to beat faster. Had I been noticed? Would I be asked to leave? The woman approached the bench and sat down next to me, looking at the empty marquee. "A beautiful ceremony, wasn't it?" she said, without looking at me. I didn't know what to say. Who did she think I was? A passerby? An uninvited guest? "Yes, very beautiful," I finally said. "You must be Dorothy Hayward," she said unexpectedly, turning to me. "Leona's mother." I froze. "How did you—" "I saw your photo," she replied simply, "in Leona's wallet. An old picture of you with 2 girls on the beach. She doesn't know I saw it." I couldn't believe it. Leona had my photo? The one from the trip to Cape May when the girls were 8 and 4? She had kept it all these years, even now that she had declared me dead. "I'm Evelyn Dunleavy," the woman introduced herself. "Ash's mother." "You know who I am and you're not calling security?" I asked, still not understanding what was going on. Evelyn smiled slightly. "Why would I? You're not doing anything wrong. You just want to see your daughter's wedding. That's natural. But your son and Leona, I know what they told you. And I know that Leona tells everyone you're dead. It's not right, but—" She paused. "I understand why she does it." "Really?" The bitterness in my voice was unmistakable. "Because I'm not rich or sophisticated enough for your family." Evelyn shook her head. "No, because she's afraid. Afraid of not fitting in. Afraid of being considered unworthy. My husband, he cares a lot about the family's reputation, connections, pedigree, and Leona wants to be accepted. At the cost of renouncing her own mother? I'm not excusing her," Evelyn said softly. "I'm just trying to explain. She's young, ambitious. She thinks she can rewrite her history, become someone else." We sat in silence for a while. The wind rustled the oak leaves above our heads, and muffled sounds of music and laughter drifted from the banquet hall. "Why don't you tell your husband the truth?" I finally asked. "That I'm alive? That Leona is lying?" Evelyn sighed. "Maybe I should have. But I've seen the way Ash looks at her. He loves her. And if the truth comes out, it could destroy their marriage before it even begins. So you're choosing her lies over my truth. I'm choosing my son's happiness, she replied simply, and maybe that's wrong, but it's too late to change anything now. I understood her. In her place, I might have done the same. I would have protected my child's happiness at any cost. Wasn't that what I had done my whole life? "What are you going to do now?" Evelyn asked. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I came to see the wedding. I saw it. Now I guess I'll go home." "Don't you want to talk to Leona? Or to Priya?" I thought about it. Did I want to? Part of me craved confrontation, wanted to tell my daughters everything that had been building up inside me, but another part of me just wanted to leave with my dignity intact. "I don't know," I repeated. Evelyn stood up. "I have to get back to the guests. They'll be looking for me. But know this, Dorothy, whatever you decide, I understand you. And I'm sorry things turned out this way." She left, leaving me in turmoil. I hadn't expected sympathy from Ash's mother. I hadn't expected her to know the truth and still keep quiet. It should have upset me. But instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. At least one person at this wedding knew I existed. I sat for another hour, watching the festivities from afar. I saw the guests go out onto the terrace with glasses of champagne, the photographer arranging the newlyweds and their families for group photos. I saw Leona and Ash happy and glowing. I saw Priya with a glass in her hand, laughing at someone's joke. My daughters looked happy in this new world they had chosen, a world where I didn't exist. Finally, I decided it was time to leave. I had seen enough. It was time to let go and move on. I walked to the parking lot where I had left my rental car. It was getting dark, and the streetlights cast a dim light on the path. I was almost there when I heard voices, 2 female voices I would recognize anywhere, Leona and Priya. They were standing at the black entrance to the club, probably out for a smoke or just to get some air away from the guests. I froze in the shadows of a tree, not knowing what to do. It was too late to leave unnoticed. They only had to turn their heads to see me. But standing there, hiding, was stupid. "I just want to say that this is wrong, Leah," Priya said. "These lies about Mom. She's gone too far." "Wrong?" Leona's voice sounded irritated. "You know what's wrong? That we grew up in poverty while other kids had everything. That I couldn't invite friends over because I was ashamed of our apartment. That Mom never aspired to anything more, just went with the flow. She did everything she could, Lee. She raised us on her own. So what? Lots of single mothers don't let that define their whole lives. They build careers, meet new men, create normal lives for their children. What did she do? She worked as a nurse for 40 years and still lives in the same shitty apartment in Hoboken." I listened, feeling every word pierce my heart. Did Leona really think that about me? That I had achieved nothing? That I was a bad mother because I hadn't given them the material things she dreamed of? "That's not fair, Lee," Priya said quietly. "Mom always put us first. Always. And look where that got her. She sacrificed everything for us and expects us to be eternally grateful. To drag her along with us into our new life as a reminder of a past I want to forget. She's your mother, Lee. Our mother. Biologically, yes. But now, in this new life, with Ash, with the Dunleavy family, I can be anyone I want to be. I can reinvent myself, and I choose to be someone without the baggage of the past, without a mother who looks and talks like a nurse from Hoboken. I couldn't listen anymore. Something inside me broke. All the months of pent-up pain, resentment, and disappointment burst out. I stepped out of the shadows. "So that's how you feel about me, Leona?" My voice was shaking, but loud enough for them to hear. Both daughters jumped in surprise. Leona turned pale. Priya gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Mom!" Leona gasped. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see the wedding of the daughter who chose to declare me dead rather than invite me to the ceremony." Leona looked around with panic in her eyes. "Did anyone see you? Did anyone notice you?" Even now, that was all she cared about. Not that I had heard her cruel words, not that I was suffering, but only the possibility of a public scandal. "Calm down," I said bitterly. "No one saw you, except your mother-in-law." "What?" Leona paled even more. "Evelyn saw you?" "Yes. And imagine she knows the truth. She knows you're lying about my death, but she chose to remain silent to protect her son's happiness, like a real mother." Leona trembled, either from anger or fear. "Why did you come? To ruin my wedding? So that everyone would find out the truth and Ash would hate me?" "No, Leona. I came because I wanted to see my daughter get married, even if that daughter would rather see me dead." Priya took a step forward. "Mom, we didn't mean to—" "Shut up," Leona cut her off. "Don't make excuses for her. She's the one to blame. If she had been different, successful, educated, refined, I wouldn't have had to lie. It's my fault?" My voice broke. "It's my fault that I gave up everything for you, that I worked 3 jobs so you could go to a good school, that I never missed a single school concert or parent-teacher conference? If it's my fault, then yes, I'm to blame." "Stop being so dramatic," Leona frowned. "You did what you had to do as a mother, but don't think that means I have to drag you into my new life." "Leona!" Priya exclaimed indignantly. "What? You know I'm right, you're just afraid to say it out loud." Priya blushed and looked away. I realized that Leona was right. Priya felt the same way. She just didn't dare admit it. "You know what?" I said, feeling a strange calmness come over me after the storm. "I'm letting you go, both of you. Live your new lives. Pretend you grew up in a different family if you want to. I won't stand in your way anymore." "Mom," Priya started, but I raised my hand to stop her. "No, Priya. I've said everything I need to say. I came here today to see the wedding and let go of the past. I've done that. Now I'm leaving, out of your lives, just as you wanted." I turned and walked to my car, feeling tears rolling down my cheeks. Neither of my daughters called after me or ran after me. They just stood there, watching me leave. As I got into the car, I saw their silhouettes in the rearview mirror, 2 figures in evening dresses against the backdrop of the lit-up club. My daughters, who had chosen a different life, a life without me. I started the engine and drove out of the parking lot without looking back. Ahead was the road home, to the small apartment in Hoboken that Leona despised so much. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was driving into emptiness. At home, I had a call waiting from Frank, who had promised to get in touch when I arrived. We had plans for lunch tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, we were going to visit a museum. Life went on. My life. Without my daughters, but with new opportunities, new people, new hopes. I had survived the worst, the day I officially died to my children. Now I could only be reborn. November in New Jersey was surprisingly mild. Golden leaves still clung to the trees, even though the calendar was counting down the last days of autumn. I was walking through Hamilton Park, enjoying the rare sunny day. My knee was still a little sore after the operation, but the pain was bearable. 3 months of rehabilitation had paid off. I could walk again without a cane, although the doctor recommended that I keep it handy in case of rain. I had the surgery in August. Frank insisted and even helped me get additional insurance to cover most of the costs. "You put it off for too long, Dorothy," he said at the time. "It's time to think about yourself." And he was right. 6 months have passed since that May day when I watched Leona's wedding from behind the bushes, like an uninvited guest. 6 months of a new life, without the constant pain of rejection, without desperate attempts to earn the love of my daughters, who had long since made their choice. I went back to work at the hospice, but now only 1 day a week. The rest of the time I devoted to myself. I enrolled in Italian classes at a local college, started watercolor painting at a studio for seniors, and joined a book club. Small steps toward a life that belonged to me, not to memories of ungrateful daughters. And then there was Frank, reliable, patient Frank, who didn't rush things but was there every day, calling, visiting, inviting me to concerts and movies. Our relationship developed slowly but surely. We were both too old for youthful passion, but what grew between us was no less valuable, a deep understanding, respect, and tenderness. Friends with benefits, Frank joked, but we both knew it was more than that. That day I stopped by Trader Joe's after my walk. My fridge needed restocking, and this store always had good discounts for seniors on Thursdays. I moved slowly between the shelves, picking out groceries and mentally planning dinner. Frank was coming over that evening, and I wanted to make something special. When I turned into the dairy section, I froze. Standing by the yogurt fridge was Leona. My eldest daughter had changed noticeably. Her rounded belly left no doubt about her condition. She was pregnant, at least 6 months along. She was intently studying the label, oblivious to her surroundings. My first impulse was to turn around and leave. Why reopen old wounds? We hadn't seen each other since that day in the club parking lot, hadn't called or texted each other. It was a complete break, just as she wanted. But something held me back. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was a foolish mother's hope that couldn't be completely eradicated. I moved closer, stopping a few steps away. "Hi, Leona." She flinched and turned around. A whole range of emotions flashed across her face. Surprise, confusion, wariness, something like guilt. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "Same as you. Grocery shopping." I pointed to my basket. "Long time no see." "Yes." She nervously fixed her hair. 6 months. "I see you're having a baby. Congratulations." She instinctively put her hand on her stomach. "Thank you. A boy, due in February." "That's wonderful. Ash must be so happy." "Yes, very." She paused, then added awkwardly, "You look good, Mom." "I finally had my knee surgery. I've been meaning to do it for a long time." We stood there, separated not only by physical space, but by months of silence and years of misunderstanding. Two women bound by blood, but so alien to each other. Are you okay?" Leona asked unexpectedly, her voice sounding genuinely concerned. "Yes, I'm fine. I work at a hospice once a week. I've started learning Italian. I'm going on a trip in the spring." "A trip? Where?" "To Italy, Florence, Rome, Venice. I've always dreamed of seeing those places." Leona looked surprised. "You? To Italy? Alone?" "Not alone. With Frank." "Who's Frank?" "My friend." I hesitated, not knowing how to describe our relationship. "A former colleague from the hospital. We've become close recently." "You have a boyfriend?" Lyon said the word as if she couldn't believe it applied to me. "Something like that." I couldn't help smiling at her astonishment. "Wow," was all she said. We fell silent again. Shoppers walked past us, glancing curiously at the two women standing frozen in front of the dairy section. "Would you like to get a coffee?" Leona suggested suddenly. "At the cafe across the street, if you have time." Now it was my turn to be surprised. "Sure, I have time." We paid for our groceries and crossed the street to a small cafe. Leona ordered herbal tea. I can't have coffee in my condition, and I had a latte. We sat down at a table by the window, glancing awkwardly at each other. "How are Priya and the boys?" I asked, breaking the silence. "Fine. Aiden won the school robotics competition. Cole is on the football team. Priya, she's the same as ever." "And you and Ash? How's married life?" Leona paused. "Fine. The house in Short Hills is lovely. Ash got a promotion. I'm still working, but I'm going to take a long vacation after I have the baby." She spoke in generalities, as if reporting to a stranger, which in a way she was. We had become strangers. "How did you find out?" Leona asked suddenly. "About what?" "About the wedding, where and when it's going to be." I told her about my niece Ruth, who worked for a wedding planning company. I told her how I had decided to go and see the ceremony from afar. "I didn't mean to interfere," I added. "I just wanted to see my daughter get married." Leona lowered her eyes. "Why were you wearing that dress?" "What dress?" "The one you bought me, the one I was going to return to the store." "But I thought you returned it. You said it wasn't your style." Leona shook her head. "No, I tried it on at home. It fit perfectly, and it was beautiful. Just like I always imagined my wedding dress would be. Simple, elegant." "But you said you ordered a dress from Vera Wang." "I lied," she said, looking down at her hands. "I didn't want to admit that your choice was right, that you knew I would like it." I didn't know what to say. All these months I thought Leona had worn that dress by accident or for practical reasons, but it turned out she had liked it from the very beginning. "What about the rings?" I asked. "The ones I bought you?" "We're using them as wedding rings," Leona confessed. They're beautiful, classic, just what we were looking for." I felt a strange mixture of emotions, surprise, bitterness, and a faint joy that my gifts had finally found a place in her life, although I myself had been cut out of it. "Why did you say I died?" I asked the question that had tormented me all these months. Leona was silent for a long time, twirling the cup in her hands. "I don't know," she finally replied. "I mean, of course I came up with an explanation, that it would be easier, that Ash's family wouldn't understand our background. But the truth is, I was just scared." Scared? Of what? That I wasn't good enough for them, that they would see me as a girl from Hoboken, the daughter of a nurse, trying desperately to fit into their world. I thought that if I created a new story about how Priya and I grew up with our father after our mother died, how we overcame difficulties, it would make me more worthy. But you are worthy, Leona. You always have been, without any made-up stories. She smiled sadly. I understand that now. But back then, I was so obsessed with the idea of a new life, so afraid of ruining everything. And now? Do you still tell people that I'm dead? Leona blushed. No. I mean, we don't talk about it. Evelyn, Ash's mother, she knows the truth. She never told me she met you at the wedding, but I figured it out. And she was kind to me, despite my lies. Yes, she seems like a good person. She is. Leona took a sip of tea. You know, after the wedding, after that scene in the parking lot, I thought about it a lot, about what I said to you, about how I acted. It was wrong. I heard something in her voice that I hadn't expected. Remorse. Not a full admission of guilt, not a plea for forgiveness, but at least an acknowledgement that she had caused pain. I'm not proud of what I did, Leona continued. And while I can't fix everything, I can't go back and change the past. I want you to know that I'm sorry. I looked at my daughter, a beautiful young woman with a rounded belly, dressed in expensive clothes, with perfect manicured nails. She seemed so foreign and yet so familiar. My heart ached with a mixture of love and pain. Thank you, I said quietly. That means a lot to me. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she added quickly. I understand that some things can't be forgiven. I just wanted you to know. We drank coffee and tea, talking about little things, her pregnancy, my Italian classes, the weather, the news from Hoboken. We didn't touch on any painful topics or delve into the past. We were like two acquaintances who had bumped into each other and decided to exchange a few words. When it was time to say goodbye, Leona stood up awkwardly, adjusting her dress over her belly. I have to go. Ash is waiting for me for dinner. Of course, I said, standing up too. Take care of yourself and the baby. She nodded, then paused and added, Maybe I could call you sometime, just to see how you are. I wasn't expecting that. Of course, Leona. My number hasn't changed. We left the cafe. It was getting dark outside and the streetlights had already come on. Leona hesitantly reached out her hand as if she wanted to hug me, but changed her mind. Instead, she squeezed my shoulder lightly. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Leona. I watched her walk to her car, an expensive SUV parked a little further down the street. She didn't look back. When I got home, Frank was waiting for me on the phone. How was your day? He asked in his deep, warm voice. Interesting, I replied. I ran into Leona at the store. Your daughter? How did it go? I told him about our conversation, about her pregnancy, about her partial admission of guilt, about her suggestion that we call each other sometime. I don't know what to think, I admitted. It's not an apology or an offer to get back together, but it's not a complete rejection like before. It's a small step, Frank said. Sometimes that's how it starts. Maybe, I said, not wanting to give in to hope. Too often in the past, Leona had disappointed me, but I'm not building my life around my daughter's expectations anymore. They made their choices, and I made mine. And what is your choice, Dorothy Hayward? I could hear the smile in his voice. To live life to the fullest. To learn Italian. To travel. To paint watercolors, even if I'm not very good at it. And, I paused, to be with someone who appreciates me for who I am. Sounds like a great plan, Frank said, clearly pleased. Speaking of plans, I booked us a table at that Italian restaurant on the waterfront. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. They say they have amazing pasta and a view of Manhattan. Sounds wonderful, I smiled, feeling warm inside. I'll be looking forward to it. After our conversation, I stood at the window for a long time, looking at the evening lights of Hoboken. My little apartment, which Leona had despised so much, had become a real home to me. It had my books, my watercolor sketches on the walls, my memories, good and bad. Meeting my daughter had stirred up a lot of emotions, but it didn't bring back the sharp pain I had felt before. Leona was following her path, and I was following mine. Maybe someday our paths would cross again in a more meaningful way. Maybe the birth of my grandson would change something in our relationship. Or maybe not. But the most important thing I finally understood was that my worth does not depend on my daughter's recognition. I did not cease to be worthy of love and respect just because my children could not or would not give it to me. I have my own life, my own dreams, my own achievements, and I have people who see me not just as a mom or a former nurse from Hoboken, but as a whole person with strengths and weaknesses. The next day, I met Frank at an Italian restaurant. We sat at a table by the window overlooking the sparkling lights of Manhattan across the river. Frank was in a suit, and I was wearing a new dress I had bought especially for the occasion. We talked about Italy, places we wanted to visit, museums, and food we had to try. To new beginnings. Frank raised his glass of wine. To new beginnings, I repeated, clinking glasses with him. At 67, I was starting a new chapter in my life. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't without bitterness and regrets about the past, but it was my own, and it was wonderful.